How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto with the Coachers Podcast, sitting here with Coach Tony Smith, head football coach for St. Paul High School. Coach Smith took over the program in 2008 and won back-to-back state championships in 2009 and 2010. Last season, 2024, they went undefeated and won the two-way state championship. Coach, thanks so much for hopping on. Please tell us about your background, family progression, all that good stuff.
It's super interesting. Thanks, Keanu, for having me in this morning. So I did not play any sports in college. I actually had no intention or idea that I would ever end up being a coach. I enjoyed high school athletics, and that was kind of the end. I thought I went to Oregon State, and I was going to get a business degree, and I walked by a bulletin board, and it said, wanted park and rec 5th and 6th grade basketball coach. And I don't know why I took the slip down and I went and coached 5th and 6th grade basketball for Park and Rec for Corvallis Park and Rec. And I really loved that. And then my high school coach asked if I wanted to come back and help before I went to school. So in 1984 was the first fall that I coached football, and I just loved it. And I changed my major to education. And from that point forward, all I ever wanted to do was coach football. And it's been an incredible, this is my 42nd season coaching football, been an incredible run.
You said 42 years?
42 years, this is 42.
That's a long time right there. So after Oregon State, I know you went to Western for a little bit, and then Linfield. I know.
Yeah, graduated from Western.
Is that master's in education? Because I know they had a good education program.
Bachelor's, and then. Yeah, I can go through the whole thing. You want me to go through the whole thing?
Hey, these things usually go for about an hour 15.
Yeah, so I coached at St. Paul for a couple years, and I student taught at Woodburn. And I've been so fortunate with the people that I have had the opportunity to work with. And I don't know, I've just been lucky. I've always been lucky in that regards. Robbie Robinson, I saw you had AJ on here. So Robbie had just got hired as the head coach at Woodburn. He started in Woodburn in 1987. I student taught in Woodburn. So I worked with Robbie for a year. On that staff was a guy named Greg Giza. Greg coaches in Salem School District. His son Tyson played at Willamette, and his other son Joe played at Linfield. But he was on that staff, and then Brad Garrett, who became an OSAA executive director or assistant executive, was on that staff, and then Robbie was on that staff too. So just great guys. And then the next year, so I student taught, got hired the next year to teach and coach at McMinnville High School. And a year later, Donnie Rutschman, who is Ad's son, gets hired as a head coach. I was an assistant coach at McMinnville. He gets hired as a head coach, which that connects me with Linfield and Ad and Jay Losey and Chris Casey, Dave Bolin, Gary Thorson. I mean, just unbelievable people.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while, was Coach Thorson.
Yeah. Just unbelievable people and coaches. And I worked with those guys, and actually, I know one of your questions is most influential guys, and Ad is amazing. I had the probably the most incredible opportunity a young coach could have. Donnie was our head coach, Rutschman, Ad's son, and I was taking my master's program was at Linfield also, and so back then it was a great deal. You just had 30 hours to get your master's. You didn't have to write a thesis paper.
That's it?
Yeah, just 30 straight hours. It ended like right after I got in, but you had 10 hours of education, 10 hours. I was a social studies teacher, 10 hours of social studies, and then 10 hours of electives. Every elective hour I took was with Ad, football, coaching, football theory. We did an independent study, but one of the deals that I did with Ad was we took every game tape from the previous season. We'd meet in the summer, 2 days a week. We'd meet from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. and we would watch every single play of the entire season over and over and over. And from the first step to where are your eyes, where are your hands, what's this guy's job, what's this guy's job, what's the cut, just every single detail. And I
And
remember,
this was pre-huddle, so you had to, how'd you go
yeah,
about,
this
you had
is
to
VCR.
manually rewind that thing.
This is VCR, yeah, with the TV on the stand and the wire controller and the whole deal. And it was just amazing. I mean, you could not have a more incredible experience. So anyway, I was at McMinnville for 6 years with those guys. Then I was dying to be a head coach. I went to Willamina for a year as a head coach, and we did some good things. They hadn't won a game. I mean, it was not a great job, but I just wanted to be a head coach. I really didn't care. They hadn't won a game in 2 years. We won some games, and then I was working at the Linfield football camp, and Silverton was there, and Robbie had gone from Woodburn to Silverton, and so Robbie wanted me to come to Silverton, and that's how I ended up at Silverton. Then Robbie left Silverton. I got the head job there. And then as my kids got older, I was either going to work where they went to school or they were going to go to school where I worked. And it just worked out. We built a house out in St. Paul on our family farm, and I ended up coming to St. Paul.
That's awesome. 5 kids, right?
5 kids. Yeah, 5 kids.
That's awesome.
They're all 25 to 32 now.
Okay. Yeah, so just a little backstory. I know I'm not really speaking to you here, but speaking a little bit to the audience for the 6 people who listen to this, right? I'm speaking to the 6 people who listen to this. So I went to school with Coach Smith's daughter. We were in the same grade. We both went to Linfield, and then got close with her husband Hayden, and now our kids are kind of growing up together, and we're always going to each other's birthday parties, even though we live down in Corvallis and they live in St. Paul. Just one more little backstory. When I was leaving Boise State and looking for a new gig, I was fortunate enough to get a graduate assistant job at Oregon State. And my wife and I were kind of in a transition period where we're trying to figure out moving situation and cars and all that good stuff. And Coach Smith over here had a nice little red Ford, was it F-150?
Yeah.
Yep. And he lent it to me for about 3 weeks. No questions asked. Didn't ask for anything in return, just for an autograph from one of the coaches. But I think he was sarcastic about that. But it tells you a lot about who Coach Smith as a man and his character. So, Coach, thank you once again for that, because you saved us a lot of money at that time, and really appreciate that. Well, anyways, I want to go into the why behind coaching. You said you never thought that you're going to be a coach before. Then you started coaching some little league, little rec basketball. But what's the why behind staying in coaching for so long?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to think about. I think one thing, it just fit for me, I don't know, personality-wise, early on especially, I think you just love the game and love ball and want to, you just want to be around it. And then as you go through it and, you spend time doing it and you get exposed to if you want to be great, you get exposed to guys that are great. And you kind of latch onto those guys and what they do and how they do things. And so I think you kind of start to develop, if you stay in it, you start to develop what you're doing. I think for me it was just a fit. I don't know. I think the things we're attracted to are the things that come easy for us, and understanding the game and scheme and where everybody was supposed to be and what everybody was supposed to do. That part was just easy for me. I became a social studies teacher. I loved history. It was easy for me. I liked doing it. And so I think that was the why of getting into it. I think, staying in it for all this time is a totally different thing. I think those are 2 different things. Not everybody. I think a lot of people want to coach. I know we got a whole, stadium of fans full of them that want to coach or think they can coach. But to stay in it for a long period of time, I think there has to be something more than just liking the game. And I think developing kids and making it about character, and the sport being a vehicle to develop character, and gives it a redeeming quality that allows you to feel good about yourself as a person, like you're accomplishing something other than just winning football games. And then I think you can drill down on that even more to just individual kids. And I started to learn more about this the more I coached, about the satisfaction of helping a young person improve their lives is incredible. And I think it's the same thing in education, making a difference. I don't know that there could be a higher calling than making a difference in a person's life. Mm-hmm. And I think that really has become the why over the years on two fronts. One, athletically, being able to approach a kid where they're at and help them improve athletically, and then being able the same thing, help them improve and mature as a person and become a better citizen. I think that's the other piece. So I think those are really the two things. I still enjoy the scheme. I still enjoy the, learning. I still go to clinics, still, I keep a little notepad on my stand when I'm watching TV and I see something and, something guys are doing. We don't change a lot of stuff. We're pretty established in what we do offensively and defensively, but I think the wanting to get better, scheme-wise, wanting to learn a different or a better way to teach something, no matter how, whether it's something as small as a first step or hand placement or, I went to John Mannion. I don't know if you know who John is, but he was a head coach at Silverton recently. Sean's dad.
Yeah. Was that Mountain View? Is he still at Mountain View right now?
No, he's done. He retired.
Gotcha.
He'd be a great guest for you. He's doing quarterback trainings and has a newsletter that he sends out. I've got to know him a little bit better the last couple years, but great guy. He put on a little clinic this past winter, and the kid that is from Central High School played at Boise.
Now he coaches at he coaches underneath his dad at Cascade Christian. Yeah,
Grant Hedrick.
I met him. I got to go on the road recruiting. I met the dad. And,
I listened to him speak, and I coach quarterbacks, and I listened to him speak this winter and learned something, just one little thing about eyes that he talked about eyes. I think that's the other piece of it, and kind of an interesting side thing from this. So like I told you, right now I farm hazelnuts. We have 100 acres of hazelnuts and coach football. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. And I don't know that I'm retired, but I don't know what retirement is. I hunt and I fish and I farm and I coach football. So I do exactly.
I mean, that sounds pretty good right there. It kind of sounds like the dream right there for a lot of guys.
I do exactly what I want to do, and then grandkids and family and everything else. But farming and raising a tree is a lot like coaching in that you plant a tree. It's just a little stick. And now it's this enormous, 15, 20 foot high, 18, my oldest trees are 18 years old. Now it's just 20 foot high, but you care for it, you grow it, you do all this stuff. It's the translation. And I didn't even realize that until about, 4 or 5 years ago. That's okay. This is kind of why I like this.
Yeah. No, that's a good little analogy, Coach. Can you kind of give the audience some context about what St. Paul is and kind of the community revolved around St. Paul?
Yeah. So long time farm families. My family came here in 1868. One Smith and his wife and one child at that point came from. This would be my great grandpa, came over from Ireland and moved to the Midwest, got married, and then took a boat down Mississippi, Panama, across to Panama, went to San Francisco, and then San Francisco for a year, Corvallis for a year, and then St. Paul. And there's a lot of families, that same kind of family history in St. Paul. So that it's a true farming community. Great schools, great community support, play. Our games in the rodeo arena. The rodeo's largest 4th of July rodeo in the nation, and 11,000 seat stadium. And the rodeo is July 4th rodeo. So about July 10th, we plant the field every single year because it gets worked up for the rodeo. It's just a dirt field for the rodeo. We plant the rodeo, and there's a farmer. It's not the same guy forever. It kind of transitions between guys based on whose kids are in school. But I help with it, and we plant the arena to grass, and then we play, and then they spray it out and work it up, and we do it again and again and again every single year. But yeah, just a real positive place to coach and raise kids and community.
Yeah, so I haven't been to a game there, but I'm thinking this time of year, November time. I mean, there's got to be some pretty good mud. Does it get pretty muddy inside there if it's
Oh, it's
raining?
awful.
Yeah.
It's yeah, because there's no crown. The grass is 2 months old, so yeah, it gets brutal. If we play two home playoff games, usually the second one we have to move it to turf because it gets so torn up. But it's beautiful for 3 months. It's just the last 2 weeks it gets thrashed.
Yeah, no doubt. So you said you've been coaching for 42 years.
42
At
years.
what point in your career were you like, I think I'm starting to kind of figure this out. Like this is who I am as a coach. I think I got this figured out.
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever felt that. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever felt that I got it figured out. I think you can. I think you. I think you start to realize what works, and you start to have success, and you start to see positive results. Continue doing those things that work. I think we just lost a game last Friday, and one of our mantras is no excuses. And then there was a bunch of them we could have, and it's every game that's ever lost, the referees, you had players out, the weather, the blah, 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 blah. But one of our deals, and we just told our kids this yesterday, is, we don't make excuses. St. Paul football does not make excuses. We got beat. We need to figure out why we got beat, and we need to fix it. And I think if you're humble, that needs to be your approach. So to ever think that, we're so good, or, we've got this thing figured out. We didn't have figured out last Friday night, so we better figure it out this Friday. We better figure it out if we play those guys again in the playoffs. I think that's just an important approach, and just one that we've always tried to take.
How many guys do you guys have on your team?
Right at 30. We have 100 kids in the school. We have 50. So about 50 boys, probably. I don't know the exact number. I'm guessing it's about 50. And we have 30 out for football.
Love that. And that's both ways and special teams right there.
Yeah.
That's both ways and special teams. Talk to me a little bit about your coaching philosophy and how it's kind of evolved throughout the years.
Yeah. So I think, like I said earlier, the guys that I had been exposed to and the influence that they had on me, and how that started to develop, from, this is just coaching football and scheme and character development and all those things. I think Ad has definitely had the most influence on me of anyone. Like I started with, I think I was just so fortunate to get exposed to him. What are the chances, that you get exposed to a college Hall of Fame coach? I mean, it was just incredible. And I thought everybody, those guys I worked with, I thought everybody was like those guys, and everybody was like Ad. That was kind of my early exposure. But they're not. I mean, it's hard to find. They're just not like that. Another interesting story, and I'll answer your question, but another interesting story about Ad. So the first time I go in to meet him, I want to talk to him about taking an independent study football class for my master's. And I knew
that's a great course right there, man.
Oh my God, it was.
You better get an A. You better have gotten an A on that.
And so I knew he'd won. I'd grown up in the area, so I know about Linfield's success. And this was they'd won 3 national championships at this point. And I go in and I meet him, and I'm thinking, this is a national championship coach? This is what they're like? Because he was so humble and so nice, so positive. And, just your expectation of, I don't know, it was just weird. It was like, what, and my thinking was, what does he do? I wanted to know what's the magic? What does he have? Because whatever he has, that's what I want, because I want to be successful like he's successful. And so I get in this independent study class, and then I get in another class called Football Theory, a graduate level course on football theory. And there's, I mean, it's in the class is like middle school football coaches that were teachers just getting their masters. And there's a guy named Doug Heyer. I don't know if you know Doug, but he's a Linfield guy, and he's
Yeah,
in the
Doug
class.
was the one that recruited me. Well,
Okay.
help recruit me.
And a guy named Floyd Halverson, who'd been a really good free safety, coached at Sunset, probably retired now. He's about my age, maybe a little older. So he's coaching at Sunset, coaching DBs, and maybe the defensive coordinator at Sunset. And so, I mean, and then there's me just starting out coaching. And there's just and so the whole class was, we would just come in with questions about football. That was the whole class. An ad would just answer questions. And
Yeah,
for however 3 week long course, 4 days a week, whatever it was just Q&A. And I'd say, hey,
that's
bring your
awesome.
questions. And so that's what we did. And so we go through that class, and every question that was asked, Ad had an answer. And it wasn't just an answer, but it was like, okay, you do this, like 5 steps to the
Yeah,
question. And the questions would be, I mean, like Doug Heyer would ask a question about offensive line play, and Floyd Halverson would ask a question about, cover 3 beaters. And then the middle school coaches would ask a question about, hey, we got 50 kids and 2 coaches. How do we structure our practice? And Ad would go through and answer in detail, step by step, how you deal with each of these situations. And I came out of that class going, that's why he's a national championship coach. It wasn't the glitz or some magic deal or something like that. It was just the attention to detail was
yeah,
unbelievable. And I thought going into that, I know something about football. I came out of that class going, I know nothing about football. And I've just kept that philosophy of, I don't know everything. There's stuff I need to figure it out, and so I think that's one piece. That's a long story about it. But
no, that's a great anecdote there, though.
yeah, I mean that's been one of the things. It just, man, there has to be. We have one of our. I don't know where I got this. I've stolen everything. I don't know if there's anything original in anything we do. But another one of our mantras, I told you, no excuses. Another one is, we're an all the time program. We're not a sometimes program.
Yeah,
We do all the time. We pursue to the football all the time. We sustain blocks all the time. We communicate on the field all the time. We have great body language all the time. It's not a sometimes thing. It's an all the time thing. And that really comes from that class with Ad, where it's, just attention to detail is so important.
I'm a little envious of you that you just got to do 3 weeks of that.
Oh my
But I
God.
mean, but I think it's very much similar to like why I wanted to start this podcast. It's like just curious of what make people tick, what their philosophy, and trying to soak up as much knowledge as I can from coaches who have been doing it from a lot longer than I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely in the same boat with you there when it comes to that. If there was any advice that you could go back and give your younger self, what would that be? Or advice for young coaches?
Yeah, I thought about this. I remember going to tape exchange. We used to have to go drive someplace, and Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, you had to bring all your, by the end of the season, you're packing 9 videos. You get in the playoffs 10. You had to dupe tapes on Friday night after the game. You had to get the game tape. You had to dupe tapes. You had to go get the tapes. You had to make sure you had all your games, and then you had to go meet coaches on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Somewhere. And when I first started out at McMinnville, we were in the Metro League, which the Metro League at that point was like the Three Rivers is now, where it was the league in the state. I mean, it didn't matter if you were first, second, third, fourth in that league. You had an opportunity to advance in the playoffs, because that league was just so, there was just a lot fewer schools. I mean, there was 2 Hillsboro schools. There was 3 Beaverton schools. Now I don't know how many there is, but anyway, so there were these really good coaches in the league, and we go to tape exchange, and I'd go with the head coach, either Donnie or Mike Cahill was the head coach when I first went there, and I'd go to the tape exchange with those guys, and we'd meet these other coaches who, were either winning state championships or playing for state championships or playing far into the playoffs. And same thing like with meeting Ad, it was like, what do they have? I want whatever they have. That's what I want. And it isn't that, there's no magic. There's no magic. There's no, one deal fixes everything. It's just the grind. It's just being, like I said, the attention to detail piece, the understanding, how to motivate kids and how to realize that. Another thing, just a personal thing that I picked up somewhere, everybody says you got to be consistent. And I think that consistency is really, really important. But, you need to treat, what I think in my head is we treat them all the same, different. Because you want to be consistent, but you have to find the individual, what each individual kid needs.
Yeah.
Like I've coached kids and I learned this coaching freshman basketball. When I coached football, I coached 3 sports when I first started at Mac. I coached football, coached freshman basketball, then I coached baseball in the spring. So I coached 3 sports. I was coaching freshman basketball, and I have 2 kids on my team, and I figured out that one, I would have to absolutely chew his ass to get him to do something because he responded to that. And I had another that I could never, ever yell at. I could never, I just had to tell, I had to speak to him softly if he made a mistake. And I had to tell him, hey, you might want to do this, And I just figured out at that point is that you can't, it's just not a blanket. You're going to go, I'm going to go coach this way. I think you do, as an overarching, themes of a program, I think it's that way. But then you got to get down to the level of every single kid, and you got to figure out, how do I make this kid better? I've had kids, every day I'd walk out to practice and I'd tell them, you're the best linebacker in the Metro League, or you're the best linebacker in the Tri-River Conference, and the kid wasn't. But I'd tell them that because they lack self-confidence, and they just need to be told that, hey, you're good, you're getting better, and it just had to be a real positive thing. So I think that you just start to understand more through time as far as dealing individually with kids.
Yeah. One thing, when I interviewed Coach Jackson Vaughn, the DC at Linfield, and the head softball coach there, is one thing that I didn't think about at the time, but he said because he coached 2 sports and he's been doing it for however many years, it's just his skill, for lack of a better word, or his coaching acumen, right, is just almost force multiplying because it's a year-round thing. And I'm thinking over here, you coach 3 sports as a young coach, and that probably, those 3 sports, because you didn't have a season off, probably accelerated your growth as a coach.
Definitely.
And there's so much crossover with the athletes playing the same different sports and so on and so forth. But that just made me think of that right there. 2019, or up until 2019, titles of head coach, athletic director, and principal.
Yeah.
Talk about how you're able to balance all 3 of those big roles.
Yeah. Well, I think it was easy, not easy, but I think I don't think there's a better training, at least in my case, or isn't a better training to be a principal of a school or to be a leader than to be a head football coach. I think it was the same thing. The kids are the team, and the teachers are your coaching staff, and you have to provide them the things that they need to be successful, and you need to we just treated it all the same. So I think so many of our educational leaders today struggle in that role. And I didn't, not that I'm just this amazing guy, but it wasn't a struggle for me, and I loved it just like I love coaching. And I think for the same reasons, all the teachers are different. You need to figure out, how you take care of each one so they can be successful. All the kids are different, and they're coming to school every day with different sets of problems. You need to figure out how to help them to be successful. On the flip side, just like coaching, you have parents that you got to deal with, and you got community organizations you got to deal with, and that's no different than coaching, and it's no different than being a principal. So I think it was a great training for me, and I I really enjoyed it. It was just a different scale of doing the exact same thing I'd been doing, which was just helping people to improve. And obviously staying organized and on top of stuff and having a system and not letting stuff go. And I'd worked for some really good administrators. I'd worked for some really bad administrators because I didn't become a principal until I'd been in education. Let's see, I started in the fall of '88. I became principal in 2014, 98, 2008. I'd been for 25 years, I'd been teaching already. So I had a lot of experience prior to getting into admin.
Obviously, you coached, had a lot of success throughout your career, 3 state championships at St. Paul. What would you say your greatest moment or moments in coaching has been?
God, it's so difficult. That's such a hard question. I mean, there's a bunch of them. There's so many. Obviously, last year's state championship was a special deal. St. Paul has had a ton of success. They did, before I graduated from St. Paul in 1982. We had success when I was there. We've bounced back and forth between an 8-man school and an 11-man school. Now 11-man 2A football plays 9-man, so we've played 8-man, 9-man now, and 11-man. And we've done the same thing since I've been there. We've played 8 and 11. We went from 8 to 11, back to 8. Now we're 9. So they have had a ton of success. My dad played on a state championship team that lost to Sisters, Oregon in a 6-man football game in 1959. They went to the playoffs the first time in 1948 with 13 boys playing 11-man football, lost to Dayton in a first. There were 2 classifications in the state. So there was there's a ton of history in St. Paul. And, so I think those moments at St. Paul, but what we did last year was St. Paul had never ever played in a 2A state championship. So that was, with all that history, 75 years of football, they'd never done that. And so that was pretty cool. And then to win it was, obviously that was amazing. But, I was thinking about that question. Even I don't. Is that as satisfying as it was? It was incredibly satisfying, and it's awesome. But we've won games we shouldn't have won. Outplayed, and kids made amazing plays. Individual kids achievement. The kid that I told you about that I had to tell him he was the best linebacker every day.
Yeah.
He's working in Iowa now. I married a gal from Iowa, is living in Iowa. I talked to him, pretty regularly. Went to his wedding in Arizona. That's a pretty cool thing too. I don't know. There's just so many. It's so
yeah. Obviously, a lot of experience as an administrator and as a head coach. When you're bringing someone if you're hiring a teacher or you're hiring an assistant coach or you're hiring an administrator, what qualities are you looking for in that person?
Well, I think there's several. I think obviously they got to have a background. Some type of background. They have to have a basis of knowledge. I think, the other thing is they have to be able to, want to help kids to get better, being positive with kids and, understanding their role as far as, kids are all different. Our words are important. Our words have an impact, and we can't just throw away things. As a principal, teachers would sometimes say things to kids sarcastically or throw away comments or whatever that would have a big impact on kids. So I think our words carry a lot of meaning, and I think we have to be careful with that. And I think it's someone that's positive, that wants to work with kids, that wants to be part of a team, and that's what I said about teachers and coaches and trying to build a program or a school. I think all that is similar.
So I prefaced you a little bit in regards to the Nella question of the day. What is your Halloween costume?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I knew she was going to ask that one. I don't really have a Halloween costume for. No, that's a pretty good one though.
Gotcha. Audie's not going to throw you in a pirate
I
costume
don't
or
know
anything like
what
that?
I don't know. I can't remember what Audie's gonna be. You know what? So I think they might be going to some rappers or something. I don't know what they're doing.
Are they?
Yeah,
Anella is gonna be, I think it's Rapunzel. I think is what it
yeah,
is, and then
yeah,
she's got some pet lizard called Pascal, which
yeah.
is gonna be Kainoa, and I'm just like, my wife's always throwing Kainoa in these bad costumes because last year he was Stitch and he looked really uncomfortable, but they put on the costume last night and it was cute as hell. So
Yeah, it's
what
awesome.
does what does the word team mean to you, Coach?
I think unselfishness is probably the biggest thing. That people have to. I think a lot about. I think about the team the same as I think about a family, and people talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, people throw it around as far as we got to be a family or we're a family or whatever, and really what that means is families don't always get along. Sometimes families get angry at each other, but ultimately they still love no matter what happens, they still love each other. So Randy Traeger, who started, was part of started Traeger Barbecues. He passed away a few years ago. He came and coached with me when I was at Silverton, and we developed, just a great relationship and saw stuff the same way. I don't know, Joe Ehrman. Have you read any of his stuff or know who
No,
he
I
is?
haven't. No.
So Joe Ehrman was a defensive lineman for the Baltimore Colts in the 1970s and has developed a mission in Baltimore, and I believe he still resides there. And he coached football there, started coaching football, and Randy and I kind of latched onto some stuff that he was talking about, and it was really about loving kids and taking care of kids and coaching character and those kinds of things. And so we ask our kids at the end of every practice how they feel about each other, and I don't think it's wrong to talk to kids about to tell kids you love them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong that they say that they love each other. So we ask them, who do you love? They all say we love each other, and then uh, we ask who loves you, and the coach and they say coaches love us. And so at the end of every practice, we ask that. Whether the kids really believe it or not, but we're pounding it in their heads, and I think that's really when people don't care about who gets the credit and they care about their teammates, then you have an opportunity to be a cohesive group. And then it's kind of our job as coaches to manage how we bring that together.
How did you and the other gentleman, Coach Traeger, come across Joe Ehrman? Is that how you say his name?
Joe Ehrman, Ehrmann. There used
Yeah.
to be an insert Sunday Oregonian called Parade, and it was just like it just would have special interest stories on different people, and he was in there, and somebody wrote an article about him, and then he wrote a book about, I can't think of what the name of the book is, but if you Google him, you'll see the book. And it kind of goes along with this same stuff we've been talking about as far as how we treat kids and the why of coaching,
Yeah.
and what we're trying to do with football. I think that's really important. I think coaching is harder and harder. I think it's harder today. I don't feel like it's any more difficult, but I think it's more difficult overall just
Sure.
because a lot fewer teachers are coaches or coaches are teachers. A lot of people are coming from off campus, especially at the lower levels, and I think that makes it more difficult without coaches in the building. Being around
Yeah.
kids all the time, I've noticed that it's harder for me. But I'd see kids every single day. I knew if they looked sideways, I knew about it.
Yeah.
And now I got to get down to, we watch film at lunch every week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so I get in there every day and see the kids and figure out who's there and grades and, somebody got in trouble or something or whatever. Where before I was just there all the time and I knew that. But a lot more off-campus coaches makes it harder.
Yeah. If there was a fellow coach or a friend that went to a St. Paul practice, what's something that you want that person to take away from that practice, just from how you guys go about your business?
Yeah, I would. The effort is a big deal. People talk about hustle and you gotta. We come on the field and we start running and we run from blah blah all that stuff. I think all of that is important, but I think we just talked to our kids about this last night too. Our JVs took off and played, so we just had our varsity guys there, and we talked to them about last night about, and I don't know where I got this either, but it goes back to this all the time thing, and we believe if you get into a close game, there's going to be just a handful of plays that decide a close game. And I always tell them, I go, I wish I could tell you that it was play 32, it was play 67, it was play 78, and it was play 102. And if you do your absolute best on those plays, we win the game. But I can't tell them. And there's going to be 150 plays in the game, and you have to play every single play like it is the play that's going to decide. So if we're in man coverage, you have to have your eyes on your man. You cannot be staring in the backfield. You can't do that one play and we lose the game. You do that one time and we lose the game. And just that it kind of goes back to that attention to detail, focus, doing stuff all the time, not sometimes. You can't come out and work hard sometimes and expect to be in shape at the end of the game and be able to execute at the end of the game if you don't have great conditioning. So I think that's one. I think, the way we treat each other, the way we talk to each other, our kids don't talk crap to each other and they're not mean, and old kids don't pick on young kids, and we don't do any of that stuff. Everybody needs to feel like they're part of the whole thing. Everybody needs, young guys need to be coached just like old guys need to be coached, and I think those would be the things that people would see.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about just the overall culture of the program. I know you've mentioned several mantras as far as no excuses, we're an all-time program. You talked about how you guys close practice, saying that we love each other. Is there anything unique from a culture building standpoint that you believe that you do at St. Paul that helps with the program? Well,
I think, we're fortunate, and I've thought about this before, we're fortunate that we have a great tradition, and I've thought, what if you were in a place where there was no tradition? What would you do? And I think you could still do it. I think you just have to work at it, and you'd have to find teams that had success or teams that upset other teams or players that were really good or whatever. But as we get kind of in the latter half of the season, I think seasons kind of split into, there's preseason, there's the regular season, and then there's kind of postseason, and we're kind of getting into that postseason thing. And I think, and they're like, it's like, say it's 18 weeks long or whatever it is, like 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, or 5 weeks, 5 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. And I think conditioning follows this continuum, where you got to get in shape, you got to maintain shape, and then you got to taper because you want to be fresh going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think the when you get to this point in the season where we're kind of entering this postseason stuff, I think we start to talk about guys, how do you want to be remembered? I think is one of our focus. How do you want the 2025 team at St. Paul High School to be remembered? A team that had talent, that could have a lot of success, but underachieved. Do you want to be remembered as overachieve? Do you want to remember, and just start to talk about that? I I've had some unbelievable opportunities in regards to football. I got to go speak at a clinic in Nebraska. Kenny Langsdorff was back there coaching. Riles was the head coach. And I got to tour Nebraska, and I got to do this all-day clinic talk to Nebraska coaches, and just incredible. Another thing I got to do was I got hooked up with a USA football early. Gosh, this is at least 10 years ago, and I got to go to a USA football clinic at the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, and I got to go to the hall.
That's pretty cool.
And it was awesome. But there was this coach there. I sat down at dinner one night, and there's this coach there from Brainerd, Minnesota, and I didn't know it at the time, and he's a legendary Hall of Fame high school coach, won multiple state championships. I don't know what his total wins is. He'd be like a Dewey Sullivan or Thurman Bell, Ken Potter. He'd be like those names in Oregon, Greg Grant. And I sat down with dinner with him one night, and he said, hey, if you could tell me a couple things about why your program's been why you've had so much success over the years, what would you say? And he told me that. He said, we talk to the kids about how they want to be remembered, and so that was a big one. And then the other one he said, and we've taken both of these, it's kind of like, it kind of goes into this whole thing we're talking about, was you have all this stuff and you start to form it as a coach and along with what you believe, and then you pick these things up, and sometimes they fit and sometimes they don't fit into what you believe, but these fit for us. That was how do you want to be remembered? And then he said, don't be afraid to tell your players that you love them. And it was like, God, that is so good. And it was just a cool opportunity. And that was kind of along those same veins. I thought about this too. When you're in the middle of coaching a season, you don't realize how good it is. Like the guys that you're working with, and it's not always good. I mean, you struggle or you don't get along with a coach. And I'm talking just from the coaching standpoint, not so much a team, but just the staff that you're working with. I've been so fortunate to work with so many amazing guys. And you look back, you can look back in hindsight and say, God, that was so much fun. We had such a good time. Those were such good dudes. I go coaching a Shrine game in 2010 with a guy named Howard Rube. I don't know if you've ever talked. He's the head coach at Astoria, Coach Jordan Poirier, and been there a long time. And I coach with him. And, you're at the Shrine, you're over there for like 10 days or whatever. So I spend 10 days with this guy. He's one of my best friends. I talk to him all the time, and it was just this random thing. And we share football, but so much other stuff, and just a connection with him and his group of guys. I mean, that's the other amazing thing, kind of more on than the coaching piece, is just the brotherhood of the coaches that you work with. I mean, I got some guys at St. Paul, that I've worked with for several years, and they're just some of my best friends.
I mean, that was one thing that Coach Lever mentioned when I had him on. That that's something, that's a dynamic that I didn't think about. It's like you're spending a lot more time with your assistant coaches during the season than you're doing with your family, and you're going through a lot of adverse situations. But you guys are everyone's on the same mission. You know what I mean? They're like you're saying, right? We're helping people to try and improve, and that's what you're doing with the players. And obviously, you face some adverse situations that bring you guys even closer. So that's a cool dynamic that I do think it gets missed a lot of times. Talk to me a little bit about practice structure. Nine man football. Break down the week for me, and kind of how you go about prepping for an opponent.
Yeah. That's a good one. So depends on those periods, that I talked about, where I think, the preseason says the first month, and then midseason, then late postseason era. But in general, it pretty much follows this same structure. Monday the JVs take off, or they're at home. If they're at home, we steal them to do set recognition. So we do defense, but we condition. Most of our guys are two-way guys. And this kind of started with the 8-man thing. 8-man is different than 11-man, obviously, from a scheme standpoint, but it's different from a conditioning standpoint, too, because you play on a regulation-sized field with 8 dudes. So the potential for longer runs are much greater. bigger plays. You on offense and when you're on defense both. So the conditioning, I believe, is different. And when I first came, I'd coached 8-man real early, but I'd been away from it for a long period of time before I came back to St. Paul. So we do more aerobic conditioning than like an 11-man program would, than I did when I was at Silverton or Mac or some of these other places. So that's one piece. So we condition, we run laps, timed laps around the outside of the football field, and gassers. So we call them trucks and race cars is how we break them up, and that's a Rutschman. I don't know if that's an ad thing, but that was a Donnie thing.
Yeah.
And so the linemen and trucks, tight ends, they'll run around, and the race cars will run a gasser, and then they'll flip-flop and gasser run around. So we condition, and then after warm-up we condition, and then we do set recognition if the JVs are there. If not, we do that, and then we run up and down the field, just running plays, either specific stuff we want to address from the week before that we had trouble with, and then stuff that we want to make sure we have in for this upcoming opponent. So we do all that offensive install, address issues from before, and offensive install for that week. And then we pull tires and we go in and watch film. That's Monday. Tuesday's a normal, indie time, which starts to go down as you get later in the season. And inside run, back 7. We do half line work, which we started this probably 10 years ago, which has been really, really good. So it'll be the center and the backup center's the nose guard, and the right guard, we just do half line, the right guard and the Mike linebacker who's the backup right guard, and the tight end and the defensive end who's the backup tight end. Yeah. And then the DB in the corner, so everybody has a counterpart on his side. We run the play correctly, may run it once, may run it 3 or 4 times, and this gets intense because it's best on best, and you can't get a good look with team at a small school, at probably any place. You don't. I mean, it's hard to get a good look with your scout team. So, yeah. But this is best on best in a half-line situation. And then they flip positions, and the number 2s go against the number 1s. And we have a set series of defenses that are the top 6 defenses that we know we will see. So 3-3, 3-4, 4-2 in, 4-2 out, 4-3. So we have these, and it's the same order every single day and it has been for a long period of time. So they know that we're in a 3-5, 3-3 first, we're in a 3-4 second, they know that series is always the same. And we run lead and everything that's off of lead blocking, and then we run our down scheme and everything that's off our down scheme. So one day, Tuesday, is lead and Wednesday is down. Yeah. And we run all of our stuff off down just in half line. And then, so we have eliminated those plays from team, shortened team time, and just work on perimeter run and passing game in team. And work all that hard inside run stuff in a half line situation, best on best. Because you can't get a good look from the JVs that would ever be anything close in team.
So just to clarify, you're going center guard, tackle, tight end, and then a receiver on the outside?
No receivers, just inside.
Okay. Gotcha.
All inside. Nothing, no perimeter stuff, everything's inside. And then we go team, and then we go same thing, defense, indie, defense, inside and back, because our linebackers flip back and forth, and then we go team D. We do our special teams within our team. So we'll do punt when we're on offense and team. We'll do punt return when we're on defense and team. Once we go in the regular season, we only do kickoff return on Thursdays. We used to go helmets only on Thursdays. Now we go helmets and shoulder pads. That's made a big difference in what we're doing too, but that's kind of a normal. And
what was the reason behind getting the shoulder pads?
It was the friggin' JV guy who thinks he's a scrimmage all-star, and it was just it was when they're not in pads. You know what I'm saying? When they're not.
Yeah, there's a different type of mentality to it.
There's a different mentality. And this is just recent. This is just like in the last 5 years where we went to helmets and shoulder pads, and it's just so much better. One of the things we do on Thursdays is it's like a mini game. Thursdays is a mini game. We kick off. we kick return, we go on a drive, we punt or score, we switch ends in a quarter, there's a turnover scripted, so we have a sudden change. Yeah. So the whole thing's a mini game.
Is that pretty common? Because I know we do that at Oregon State, and we did some of that at Boise State.
It wasn't for us. It wasn't for us. We actually got it. We had this I got an awesome Mike Riley story. You want to hear this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I kind of have a connection with Jay Losi was at Oregon State. And so I kind of have a connection with when Riles is there and Jay's there and H.D. Waddell was the chaplain. And so I know all those guys. I don't know Mike, but I know all those guys. And I'd met DVD. And so I know all those guys. And so I'm able to get us in. I want to bring my team down. We're going to go play down there. It's on a Friday. We're going to go play. We weren't in Corvallis. We're going to be going through Corvallis about the time they were going to be practicing on a Friday. This is I don't know exactly what year this is, but it's the year, the Beavs were not having a good season. They're like 3 and something. And the year before, Poirier goes off and they end up going to the Sun Bowl and doing all that. And they're getting a ton of crap. They're not playing well. And so we go down there and we're able to bring our guys down and stand on the sideline when they're doing their Friday practice in helmets. And so they run this session where they start like on the 50 and they move the ball 5 yards and it's all the pass plays. I think Mannion might have been the quarterback. It's all the pass plays they like in each of those scenarios. And they're just running them on air full speed. And that session gets over and the horn goes off and they go to something else. And Mike was out there with them. And Mike walks over to St. Paul is never going to have a kid that, I wouldn't say never, but the chances of St. Paul having a kid that ever plays at Oregon State are next to nothing. And here's a guy that's not having a good season, D1 coach, not having a good season. And he walks over after that session is done. How are the Buckaroos? How are you guys doing? Shakes our kids' hands, talks to our kids, spends way more time than you would ever think a coach in that position would spend. Knowing that it's not like we had a kid on our team and he's doing it to look good. And then goes back out and starts running practice again. And the most impressive thing I've ever seen in my life from a big-time coach taking the time to talk to a group of kids that aren't going to be players for him. He just did it because, he's a good dude.
Yeah, and made their day too.
Yeah, made their day too. They'll never, ever forget that.
Yeah, I know. I think what you're doing with the mock game the day before the game is smart. I mean, I think that's one thing that we did that I really liked when my time at Oregon State. Yeah. Because then you can just there's just a lot of situations that you can script within the mock game that you don't have to try and drill throughout practice. You can just set it for that mock game. Like for us, it was always Mayday situation. So we have no timeouts left. We have to run the field goal team out there to get a hurry kick. That was good. The offense got to practice their operations as far as end of game. I can't remember what they call it, but they have their situation where they got 6-7 seconds left and maybe 5 seconds left, and it's fourth down, but they don't want to punt. So what they're going to do, they're going to just heave a ball as far as they can out of bounds. If they want to milk more clock and they don't want to take a safety, they had an operation in where they throw it hike it to the quarterback, snap it to the quarterback. He would throw it back to the guy 20, 30 yards back, and he just runs around in the back of the end zone and kills time until it expires or goes outside and takes a safety. So there's a lot of good stuff when it comes to the mock game. How do you go about establishing a sense of leadership within the team?
So we put our kids into what's called buck packs, and we sold this from Robbie at Silverton. They're the Silverton Foxes. He called them fox packs. We call them buck packs. So every year right at the end of the school year, we have a draft, and the returning older guys get to be captains of a buck pack. The buck packs are color coded. For us, our school colors are blue and white, so they're blue, white, navy, Carolina, and one more, black maybe. I can't remember. Anyway, there's 5 buck packs. And so they're in a leadership role. They're kind of forced into a leadership role being back. And then they're responsible for those guys and communicating to those guys. So we'll communicate to them. hey, weights at 7, make sure your guys are there. And then we have a little friendly, like whoever wins the summer deal gets a pizza party or whatever. So they're kind of in a leadership role already. We go to with that. We kind of set it up and force them to be. When we go to team camp, and Brown, I can't think of his first name. He does not Evan Brown. Anyway, I read a book probably 20 years ago. The guy's last name is Brown, and he talked about this, about leadership and servant leaders and all this stuff. But he talked about team culture and standards, having rules, having standards, and how you establish that within a team. So what we do is at team camp, we talk about, okay, what do we want to be about this year? What does a St. Paul player look like in school? What do they look like on the field? What are we going to be about? And we kind of go through, and with the older guys talking to the younger guys in their group, they kind of share with them what we're about and what we're going to be about. So our standards of, we're going to give a great effort. That usually comes out every single year with the kids, that's important to them. Everybody's going to stay eligible. Everybody's going to attend summer weights and summer skill workouts, and everybody's going to do that. So the older kids are kind of teaching the younger kids what the culture of the program has been in the past. So they're hearing it, and then they kind of get to put their own individual, like maybe there was something we didn't do the year before, didn't do a good job of, that they want to see us do this year. So they're kind of put in this position with their group of younger kids, and then we share that as a group, as a team, and we write them down and we say, okay, this is what we're going to be about this year. And then it's been way easier. Like if we don't have a great practice and we got to get on the kids about it, it goes back on them. You guys said you wanted to come out here and give a great effort every day. You said this is what we will be about. We did not do that today, okay? So I'm just the one holding you accountable for what you said you wanted to do, what you said you wanted to be about. So they kind of feel they have a role as a leader within a smaller group. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is I've kind of found this to be true. There's just a handful of kids, and they're not seniors always. They're rarely sophomores, sometimes juniors, most of the time seniors. It just depends from year to year. We don't pick a council, or we don't do any of that. We don't make it a big production or a big deal. But there's about 3 or 4 kids of our 30, on a bigger school there'd be more kids that are going to kind of decide how things go. Yeah. So we'll just pull those guys. I mean, we know who they are. And at the beginning of the season, we'll say, hey, we see you guys as leaders of this group. Is there anybody else that you see as a leader of this group that should be part of this group? And they'll say no, or they'll say yes, or they'll say whatever. And then that group will just meet with periodically.
That's cool.
Whenever, like we just met with them the other day, we played, a 4-quarter tough game, and we met with them at the end of lunch yesterday, and we said, I said, hey, how was your conditioning? Because most kids are going to say great, because they don't want to run any more than what they're running. But I know these guys will be honest because they want to be great. They want to win a state championship. And I don't think it's wrong to talk about, one of our other themes, mantras, is 1-0. We want to just be 1-0, which is a classic 1-0, but it's way more than that. What do we have to do now? Another acronym, WIN. What's important now? Kind of goes with that 1-0 piece as far as what we have to do right now, today, this week, to be successful. I think, and I got this from Robbie because he was brash about talking about this. I'm not as brash as he is, but he taught me that it's okay to be brash. We talk about wanting to win a state championship. We don't talk about it every day, but we talk about it periodically. If a kid fumbles in practice, we tell him, you dropped a blue trophy. Blue trophy is a state championship trophy in Oregon. So we say, hey, you fumble, you drop a blue trophy when you fumble. We do one sprint, not every week, I would say probably every other week, and we make it a blue trophy effort. Okay, if you're going to trade this conditioning for a blue trophy, how hard would you work? It's just it's across the field sprint, one sprint that's kind of at the end of everything else. I don't think it's wrong. I used to think it was wrong to talk about that, but I've learned over the years it's not. You dream. There's dreams, there's goals, there's immediate, there's long range. Winning a state championship is a dream. We have goals to achieve that dream. We don't talk about it all the time. It's not why we do stuff, but I think it motivates the day-to-day grind, that it is out there and it's an achievable thing that we're working towards. And I think it's okay to talk about it occasionally.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good stuff, Coach. Talking about your captain process made me think, because I always like to ask that question and see what other schools are doing unique. And I thought it was unique. I talked to the Whitman heads men's basketball coach for Whitman College, and he says that he doesn't do anything for the captain's process.
Yeah.
Like he says that first game, usually one or two guys go up to meet with the ref, and he'll help monitor. Like if those aren't the right two guys, then he'll say something and step in. But usually he said 90%, upwards of 90%, that it's the two right guys.
Yeah.
That kind of are preordained or organically happens where they go in there and they show up. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Tom Osborne had in his book, he had a great deal about, that's a great book too. But he talked about account.
What was that one called? Tom Osborne?
Gosh, you're killing me with these, or I'm not doing a good
I mean, I geek out when it comes to like sports books. So
Faith in the Game, Lessons on Football, Work, and Life. It's awesome. It's a little paperback.
What would be like your top two books?
Oh my gosh.
That you swear by?
I don't know. That'd be a tough one. I don't know. I know there's a Joe Paterno book. I know his name is canceled, but there's a Joe Paterno book that's an amazing book. I'd reread it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to think. There's so many. That's a good question. I don't know.
If your team faces a bad setback or tough loss, what does that communication look like? We kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, we just had that this week. Yeah. I think that goes back to that humility thing, and and I've been around coaches. You've probably been around these coaches, think they have all the answers, make excuses. The first thing I do, I heard this, I sold this from somebody too. Post-game meetings. Okay, let's start with that. If you win, they need to be short. If you lose, they need to be shorter. Okay,
that's it.
It is. It's how It's how, if they win, let them go celebrate, thank their parents, see everybody, blah blah blah. You're not going to fix it. I see these guys sometimes. Friday nights, guys gather with their teams down the end zone, and I see these guys sometimes. They're down there for like 15 minutes talking to their team. You're not going to fix anything.
Yeah.
The kids are tired, just got beat up, whatever. They won. Doesn't matter what you say. Anyway, all they're thinking about is the pizza they're going to go get and everything. I mean, you're not going to. So that's one thing as far as a post game.
I'm gonna take that one. I'm taking that one. That's a good one.
And then as far as tough loss or setbacks, we always go back to it's about us. It's about what we do. No excuses. It's not about what they did. They didn't have some magic deal that they did. It's about our execution, and we need to fix that. And that's really what you go back to. And depending on the point in the season, like the game we lost last Friday, the non-league game, doesn't change that we're going to win our league championship. Doesn't change that we're going to be have a high seed going into the state playoffs and host a home playoff game. Doesn't change any of those things. All this is going to do is make us better, because we're going to address these things that we did not do well, and it's going to make us better. And so I think that needs to be the approach after tough loss.
Yeah. That's a good answer, Coach. Appreciate your time. We got any final advice on coaching, teaching, leadership that you want to share for the good of the community?
I'll share this with you, but I started working on this paper about it, and the title of it is "Greatness is an Ideal."
Is an ideal or
is an ideal?
Yeah.
Like it's this idea of greatness, okay,
yeah.
and what it's about and how we get there and how we achieve it. And so I'm about, I don't know, 10 pages in to this thing, and I add stuff to it and whatever, and I'll share it with you. But you know,
I'd love to read it.
it's got some. I got pretty high tech. I got some links to Batman Begins and Star Wars and.
What are you doing? What are you doing it on? Like just Word document? What do you?
I don't know. Google Doc probably.
Oh, Google Doc. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not some super tech guy, but I would share it with our coaches when I was AD about what are we about? What is our programs about? What are we about? We want to be about greatness. I mean, I think that's what we're all want to be great humans, want to have great programs, want to have great kids. You want to raise great kids. I want to have
Amazon ebooks. I mean, if you like it, Amazon ebooks, you could make some coin off of it.
I'll share it with you. Don't be spreading it out there.
I'm not.
Well,
I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, it's fun. I had fun with it. It's a bunch of the stuff that that we talked about here today, just kind of in a more succinct manner.
Well, I appreciate your time, Coach. Tell the fam I said hi.
I will. Bye.
All right. See you, Coach.